Hello and welcome to another episode from the Water's Edge, and today you catch up with doing slightly something different. We're on the saltwater theme, but rather than fishing the open beaches, we're actually fishing the river today. We're fishing the River Blyth in Southwold. We've got the Blyth estuary a few miles that way, and then we've got the beach about a mile or so that way. So something a little bit different. It's an area where I've spent quite a bit of time with the family on sort of Saturdays and Sundays, come down and have a walk. And I think as anglers, you see a bit of water and you're always intrigued as if there's any fish in there. So hopefully we're going to try and target a few today, if there is. The main species probably we're going to be targeting is going to be the flounder, but I'm sure there's going to be plenty of other bits and pieces, whiting, rockland, eels, stuff like that. So that's the plan anyway. We had quite an early start this morning. We left the house about 6 o'clock because it's important that we hit the high tide, which today is at 10 o'clock. So we're probably going to fish a few hours up to high tide and then perhaps an hour or so the other side. It's imperative when you're fishing somewhere like this. In general, the high tide mark is going to be when you're going to catch, if you are at all, purely because you're guaranteed a bit more depth of water. So that is the plan. We've got 2 rods out there fishing at the moment. So what I'm going to do is keep an eye on those tips and hopefully be able to report back with a fish. Well, just had a little nibble on this rod. Not been out too long, but we'll see if we've got anything on here. To be honest with you, I'm gonna not leave it too long between casts, because a lot of these sort of the rivers and estuaries you fish, a lot of the time, I'm sure you're all aware that in summer and probably for most of the year, they're a haven for crabs, and often you come down here for a walk and you know you'll see crabbers all up and down, but nothing on there. We must have missed him, whatever he was, whether it was a crab. But you can see there about what I'm saying about not leaving baits out there that long. They are absolutely stripped, and you'd probably, it amazes me sometimes, you'd probably do well to strip that off that clean with your hands. But we'll get it back out there and we'll check the other rod and get that back out as well. Well, just was sorting that rod out, I had another little rattle on this one. Again, I'm not sure whether we're going to be troubled by the crabs. I know we're going to be troubled by them as in taking the bait, but I don't know if they'll actually give us an indication on the rod tip. They feel a little bit of weight there, whatever it is. Let's have a little look. What have we got? Well, we did have a crab, but he's just dropped off. But we have got our first fish of the session. Just unhook that off there. And he is absolutely tiny. That is a little rockland, that, and I don't know, it could actually be a first for From the Water's Edge, the first rockland on camera. But I'm hopefully he's not going to be the biggest fish of the session, but I guess it's a start anyway. So we just put that first fish back. I guess it's a good sign that there is actually signs of life out there, but I do hope that's not going to be the biggest one of the session. But while we've got this rod out there, I just thought I'd show you the rig we're using, because it is slightly different because we're fishing a river and obviously an open beach. Now, the bottom here is very muddy and you can probably see it all around and stuck on our boots and whatnot. So we've changed one of the rigs anyway. The rod we've got fishing at the moment is just a standard 2-hook flapper. Smallish hooks, a little bit of bling, but this one is vastly different. And what we've got here is in essence is a running rig. So we've got a little slider there which has got a little flat lead on it. Now, this flat lead is about 3 ounce, I think, something like that, because there is a bit of tide today, but that's more than ample for what you need. And the flat lead, basically, it's not going to go too far in the mud. The idea, it can sort of flutter down and settle nicely. And then we've got probably a 3-foot snood. And on this 3-foot snood, we've got 2 little hooks coming off it. And that's probably, I don't know, they're probably 1.5 foot apart. So what enables you to do is the area you've cast, you can cover a little bit of ground within that area. Now, it's probably a name for this rig. I know, I'm a bit out of touch with it all, to be honest with you. But if you do know, drop it in the comments below. But what we've got on this little snood here, I've actually added some floating beads. And one is a bit of attraction, but also because, as I mentioned, there's going to be a few issues with crabs, it will just give that bait a little bit of buoyancy and perhaps float it off the bottom. But You can see there one of them beads looks like it's been smashed, so I'm probably sure a crab's had his claws around that. But yeah, so that'll give it a bit of buoyancy, and this one here can just sort of flutter about in the tide. Hook wise today, real small fine wire hook. I think that's a size 2. Probably the majority of fish we're going to be catching are going to be pretty small, to be honest. I mean, there's a chance of a half tidy flounder or even a little schoolie, but in general it's going to be small species. Bait we've got with us, we've got 100 worm. I'm just baiting up this first hook now. Ideally I would have liked to get some rag, but you know, fresh lug is more than good enough, I feel. It's gonna, you know, catch most fish out there. But that's the first hook baited. We'll just get this second hook baited. Good sign of that, there was a little bit of bait left on there after that last cast, which yeah, didn't happen with the first rod. But 1 or 2 worms, depending on the size. Probably prefer sort of small compact baits rather than anything too big, to be honest with you. But we've got a little weather window this morning, and we've actually got a big storm due this afternoon. I don't know, whatever they've called it, they give them these funny names now, don't they? But you know, when we were younger it would just be called winter. But we've got a little weather window, a few more hours down here, and hopefully, most importantly, a few more fish on camera. But see the two little worm baits, one with the floating beads and one without, and I think actually that little rockland came on them, so certainly not put them off. But what we'll do is we'll get this flicked out there and hopefully report back with another fish. We had a little nibble on this rod, not been out there that long. There's a little bit of weight there, so I'm pretty sure we're going to have another fish to show you. Let's have a little look. What have we got? Well, we've actually got 2 fish. We swing them in. That's certainly not going to break any records, but it's an improvement on what we have had. The wind's picked up a little bit, so we've put on the external mic, so I hope you can hear it all right. But yeah, little whiting on the bottom hook, and then a little flatty has taken a liking to them yellow pop-up beads on the top hook. So the rig's working all right. It's 3 fish on this one. We'll get them unhooked and get some more baits in the water. Well, I think we've got another fish on here. Another little rockland. He is a fat little fella, he is. He's obviously been feeding up on something. But there we go, funny little fish, almost like a mini catfish, I guess. And I think there's 2 different sorts. You've got a 3-bearded and a 5-bearded, I believe, because on the sort of nostril here, they've got these little sort of barbule things, or beards. But yeah, something a little bit different, but again, not really what we're after, but we're getting unhooked and getting back. So both rods are back out there fishing away. We've had a few bits and pieces. The tide is now turned though, so it's now on the ebb. So we are going to start losing a little bit of water as it ebbs out. But to be fair, I don't think it's really going to make too much of a difference. As I've never fished here before, I was a bit concerned that, you know, at low water there might only be 2-3 foot of water out there. But there's a real good depth, you know, casting around, whether that's been short, middle of the river, far side. There's plenty of depth there, and it certainly should hold a few fish. And that's what I've been doing with the cast, really. Not only just timing them to see the crab situation, but exploring the river, really. So yeah, some 20 yards out, some middle of the river, some far side, and just see if you can find a few fish, because quite often here there's mud. You can see all the sort of ridges and stuff behind us. The little leads we use, and they will actually sort of fish themselves in the tide. So if there's a little deeper gully or a little plateau, they will settle and hopefully, you know, explore out a few fish for us. But they're only about, I don't know, I think 2.5, 3 ounce, and that's been no problem today. But one thing you want to do is, if you're fishing with them, is when you cast it out, just let them have that little bit of extra line so they can settle where they want. Another thing to mention is you'll probably notice I've got the tripod really low today, and what that enables you to do is just keep that line to the water and make sure that it keeps your rigs pinned down to the bottom, because if you've got a real tight line and a real high angle on your rods, you can imagine the angle of your line is like so, your snoods might be touching the bottom. Well, fishing for flounder and stuff like that, they're bottom feeders, so you just want to make sure that your rig and the last however many yards of line is pinned to the bottom. So that's what we're doing, just keeping an eye on the tips. A few little rattles every now and again, which could be small rockland again, or they could be crabs, because there's certainly plenty of them about. One for the gram. Don't follow us already from the Water's Edge TV. Well, we just had a proper good knock on this rod now, so we'll bring it in and see what we've got. Losing the water really quickly now. It's surprising how quickly that tide has gone away, but there's definitely something on here anyway. Just a case now, seeing what have we got. Well, what, 3 crabs and another rockland, and they're proper. Oh, there goes one. They've proper tangled that rig up. But it's amazing, honestly. If we had the cameras rolling for that bite, you'd be amazed. Yeah, I thought it was going to be a decent sized flounder, but we'll get this sorted out, get these back, get it back out. Well, I'm just going to have a look at this rod. Good knock on it again, but I don't know if they're crabs or not. But as you can probably see behind me, the water is well down now. Tide's well on its way out, but we've got a fish on here. What have we got? Another rockland. They've certainly saved a blank today. They're not the species we've been after. But a little bit of sport anyway, you keep rod tips rattling. But we'll get them unhooked, get them back. Well, last cast of the day. We'll get this one in, just got the other rod packed away and got the brolly down and whatnot. But I don't think we're going to be able to end it with a fish, I'm afraid. No bites on this one, and that's coming in very light. Yeah, nothing on here. But it's been a thoroughly enjoyable day, and something that has been a little bit different. As I said, I've been up and down here loads with the family, walking up and down on Sunday and stuff, but never actually wet a line here, and it's good to come down, and I guess it proves there is some fish here. But certainly something to try again anyway. I think perhaps on a different day, different conditions, different time of year perhaps, then there's got to be some flounder in there, I'm convinced of it. But one thing, if we do come back, and worth mentioning, is definitely this little rig with the 2 snoods and the floating beads has outperformed the 2-hook flapper by probably 95%. I think pretty much all of the rockland, I don't know, a dozen or so, whatever we had in the end, pretty much all came on this. So that'd be probably next time 2 of these, perhaps a bit of ragworm, and see if we can't get some better results. But I have enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed watching it too. So as always, thanks for watching, be lucky, and we'll see you again on the next one.